Hello, folks. This is Mark Weissy from Maple Capital Partners, and we're going to go into another interview, kind of like the last one that we had. We've been doing a series of these where we talk to entrepreneurs in our circle and ask them about how they got started, why they chose the entrepreneurial path, and where they are today and their goals, really to learn more about how individuals, regular individuals like you and me, can get started in business ventures and really start to grow those and thrive as an entrepreneur. So with that, we'll get started talking with Justin Donnarumma. Justin is a partner of mine on several projects. We're now doing a project in Puerto Rico together. He's been a source of inspiration for me and really kind of like a mentor in business. So with that, Justin, maybe you want to give us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Mark. I'll start pretty much from at some point we'll probably go through earlier background, but just where I am right now is I left my corporate job in 2020, and I am a multifamily investor, have a medium-sized portfolio, and I own several small businesses as well now, along with getting into some hospitality.
Yes, that's great. So that's kind of where you're at today. In terms of rewinding the clock back to growing up, you grew up in New Jersey, right?
Yes,
What was
correct.
that like? What was your childhood like? Were you always into entrepreneurial ventures? Were you exposed to people who were doing it on their own? Like, what did that look like?
Sure. Yeah, grew up in Wayne, New Jersey, and went to Wayne Hills High School. I would say I was always either entrepreneurial or athletic. Those were the two things that I pretty much focused my life on, and I attribute a lot of my business success to sports, actually, specifically the sport that I played, which was baseball, just because of how much failure there is in baseball. So I always attribute that to each other because I never cried when I got out, and it was always something where, okay, I'm going to get another at bat later on. So that's a really direct correlation. It's different from other sports where you succeed a lot more. In baseball, the old saying is, if you get 3 hits out of 10, you're a Hall of Famer. So you fail 7 out of 10 times. So I wouldn't say I have any major entrepreneurial spirit in my family. I mean, I was working and trying to work at a very young age. I didn't even know what flipping was, but I remember I flipped old cell phones on eBay when I was in sixth grade. I'm always trying to wheel and deal in the school cafeteria, trading better snacks for snacks for better snacks. So that's the lowest level of entrepreneurship. So I would say it happened early, trying to figure out video games, trying to sell video games, or I would take video games that I can get and return them for store credit. So it was always some kind of game that I would always play. And even to this day, I like to do that kind of stuff just because it's not a lot of money, but it just like there's some kind of itch that it scratches for me.
Yeah, you're owning the Gary V type of mentality there with both the Jets shirt on and then flipping those things. So yeah,
I
as well as being from
didn't even know
Jersey.
who he was. Yeah, I didn't even know who he was. And we had a lot in common.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's great. Great guy to emulate. In terms of college and your early professional life, what did that look like?
Sure. So I went to Ramapo College, played baseball there for 4 years, graduated with a business degree in marketing. I never really knew what that meant, advertising or this, but it actually ended up leading me into sales somehow, right? So I graduated 2010. The economy market was not really too great then, still coming up from the collapse of the stock market. So I took the first job that I pretty much can get at that time, which I used to sell roofing, siding, windows at a supply center. Not a glamorous job by any means. Didn't make a lot of money at all. Even by our standards today, it was a very low paying job, entry level, where I did inside sales. So I was basically just taking orders from contractors for product. But that also ended up being that I had to go into the warehouse and pull orders. It was not trust me, it was not a sales job by any means. It was called inside sales, but it was not a sales job. But I actually did learn a bunch of the what could have set me up later on in life, which is I know all the products now for a lot of the industry that I'm in now. So that did actually help. Coincidentally, did not mean to have that happen. But quickly after that, I got into the tech space and I worked for a startup company where I was just absolutely pounding cold calls. And to be honest, the first couple of days, I remember calling my mom and just saying like, I hate this. I cannot believe that I left this one job. I have to go into the city every day. But at the same time, I really didn't have a choice because I bought my first multifamily in Lyndhurst, New Jersey, two family. And again, I was making $35,000 at the time, and I needed the income from the second floor to be able to afford this. And if I didn't get that money, I really could not afford this. Now, luckily, well, I guess it wasn't luckily, I paid for every penny of that house. My father at that time co-signed because I legitimately did not make enough money on paper to buy that house, although I knew I would scrap together and figure it out. So again, I think that's a word that you'll see, and a lot of entrepreneurs have, that is the scrappiness, to be able to succeed, and nothing was ever going to stop me from getting to where I was. So it's really more about will over skill, in my opinion, just in general. Like, that's a high level overview, but that's a mantra that I always come up with. It's will over skill. So from there, I worked at that startup company. It was called Signpost. It was a tech company. And I was there for over 5 years, and that was a catapulting. I got really good at sales from that. Didn't know that I was going to be good at sales, but because again, it was a little nerve-wracking at first. And then from that point, there was again just being really good at it, then moving up naturally in that company to a manager, to a sales manager, to a director of sales. And then I moved out to Colorado, opened up an office in Denver, was 25 years old, managing 125 people. So things that people may never do in their career, I was doing at a really young age because of the size of the company. The tenure of the company was all much younger people. Throughout this whole entire process, I always was investing in real estate behind the scenes. So I'll probably pause there. I think that's enough to get to the next question. But I always had some type of drive in me to be able to get to that point where I knew that I didn't want to do this forever, even though like a good paycheck was coming in for the most part as I was moving up. Like, I felt like it was a lot of money, but in hindsight, it probably still wasn't a lot of money. So yeah, that's the career. And then again, it just kind of kept going up in tech sales. I worked for LinkedIn. I worked for Monotype. And these were some of those were publicly traded companies, obviously, at the time. And that's where I ended my career at Monotype in 2020.
Okay, so yeah, so thanks for taking us through that. You got started really kind of a humble job, it seems like. Worked your way into a slightly different vertical, different industry, but you gained a lot of sales skills and a lot of know-how that later served you in your real estate career. Started to build your portfolio. You started with what sounds like a house hack, which you could barely afford, but you took that step, which a lot of people don't do. They learn a lot about real estate, and they go to all the masterminds and things like that, and then ultimately they don't do the most important thing, which is taking action. But you weren't afraid to do that. And then as you were growing in your career, you were also building up your portfolio on the side. When was the point that it actually became like, okay, I can do this full time, that you had that belief or that you had that courage to be able to jump into this full time? What did that decision look like? Because that's something that a lot of people struggle with. They may not like their career or not be in love with their career, but they haven't built up that portfolio, or they're not sure when
Sure.
to kind of make that jump.
Sure, it's a really good question. So I'll touch into a little bit deeper. So as I was still working in New York City, in the corporate world, I started a couple businesses. So I started flipping houses with another partner. I started to buy more real estate by myself and with other partners. So I had a really steady flow of income coming, but I was, again, I was good enough. Again, I think this is a really important thing to understand. You can open up side businesses while you work in the job, as long as you're willing to do it nights and weekends, and you're good enough at your job to not let the company know that you're doing anything else. So I did that for years and years and years, where so I ended up opening the property management that is pretty successful right now was a really small property management company 4.5 years ago. I started that while I was working in the city. I was doing general contracting jobs for years. I'm a licensed GC. I got my realtor's license while I was at the corporate world, right? So I had a lot of stuff working in the background as this was happening, but you can't just completely stop your W-2 job while you're still ramping up. So there is that balance. And I wouldn't say that there was a time where I was ready, because you never feel like you're ready to take the jump. I think realistically what happened was it was during COVID. I don't know if they were trying to downsize, they were trying to bring in different types of people, but they knew that even though I was top 15 in the company at the time out of like 80 sales reps. And that's still, even though but I think that what bothered them was that I was able to do the job pretty well, but only work like 15 to 20 hours a week. That really bothered them, I think, internally. Like, hey, why didn't this guy just work 40 hours and do twice as good? Where I kept saying, like, why do you care how well I'm doing if I'm still putting up the numbers that the goals are being hit? But they just had some type of way about it. I completely understand why they had that way about it. I'm not, it's funny because I try to reach back out to the employer, the guys that work there, the girls that work there, to just tell them like thank you for kind of pushing me out, but they never answer my calls because I'm happy and I'm proud that they did that because I was ready to take the step. And it's kind of hard to always take your one foot off the hamster wheel when you know that you're getting a guaranteed check. But now fast forward all these years and I'm so much happier. I make way more money than I was making in the corporate world because every dollar is going into my pocket versus their pocket where I was making 5 to 10% of the deals that I was bringing in. Now all of it goes into my pocket, plus all the tax write-offs that, I mean, I can have a whole segment on this on tax alone. But yeah, it's really more of you just need, you'll know, everyone will know the balance. And I guess whoever's listening to this, you'll know the balance. You'll know when it is time and when it's too, when that seesaw falls too far to their side and you're like, this is either too much work or I'm making too much money or I'm too anxious, whatever that feeling is to get out, you'll know. So luckily my company gave me a small package and that was my send off.
Yeah, that's really, really good in terms of advice for others that are looking to make this transition. And I love what you said early too, where you were talking about, okay, in order to do this, you have to already be really good at your job. It's not like you can have a mediocre standing at work or performance at work and then go off and decide to do all this other stuff. It's like you have to be cemented in your career, and you still have to be able to give 100% in your job and do the job essentially before you
Or at
take on all
least,
these
or
extra.
yeah, or at least do 100% of what the other staff is doing.
Right.
So again, you might be good at it if maybe your 50% is everyone else's 100. So
Right.
then it kind of just weighs the option.
Totally.
Yes, for sure, being overly proficient in your job is important so that the corporate job doesn't see a missed beat.
Yeah. When I say 100%, I mean really fulfill the role. You have to fulfill the
Correct.
role just like anybody else would. And then you can go off and do all this other stuff on the side. And then ultimately for you, your decision was made for you. But by the time that that came about, you already had all these other businesses that you had started and were some of them probably at this point were thriving. But then you were able to focus 100% of your energy on those businesses and they were able to grow massively from there. Can you speak to that? What kind of time freedom, or I guess what that gives you, having that time freedom
Yeah,
once you leave the
100%.
W-2?
Yeah, so I was having a second baby at the time. I already had one, and it was probably not the best time to not have a job, honestly. Cobra was ridiculously priced, and I didn't know anything about insurance. I'm like, everyone cares about insurance. Oh my God, insurance. I need to keep my job for insurance. That's like the number one thing you hear. And I'm like, well, do you know how much private insurance actually costs? It's really not that bad. So stop only keeping your job for insurance. I think that's like something that if anyone could take anything out of this, it might be that little nugget that like everyone thinks insurance is so important. Meanwhile, you could just buy Medicare or whatever for pretty cheap. So that's a total side note. But to answer your question, it freed up all my time, right? So think about where I was. I lived in Nutley at the time. It was an hour and 5 minutes to the office. So that's 2 hours, 10 minutes a day. No stress from having a commute. Obviously, it was COVID. So like you really weren't commuting anyway, but that's here nor there. The first thing I remember doing was obviously like really focusing on the general contracting because that was like quick money. You sell a roof job, you sell a window job, a siding job, a flooring job, and you get money pretty quickly. And again, selling a homeowner was like literally the most bread and butter thing for me because I was selling really tough software to like small business owners who have no money. Now, if I'm going to sell a regular homeowner, that was like a piece of cake for me. But fast forwarding to where I think I really focused most of my time was I took my current assets that I had, which were at that time, I think I only had maybe had 5 or 6 houses 4 years ago. Yeah, probably 4 or 5 houses at a time. I focused on like, how do I squeeze every ounce of water out of that rock? So at that, because it was in front of me. So I said, how do I maximize what I have now? And how do I start to catapult? So I started to get lines of credit through my businesses to then take those lines of credits to buy houses to flip. And I took that money from flipping and I parked that money right into long-term rentals. So again, the second piece that I would listen to in this thing is how to leverage money. I'm not saying I'm an inventor of this, but I leverage money extremely well to be able to continue to park my money. The easy sequence was I was using other people's money or lines of credit to buy flips. I was taking the flip profit, paying down whatever I already owed, and taking that profit and then putting that money into a long-term rental. So I just rinse and repeat that a million times. Then I started doing obviously the BRRRR strategy, which quickly I want to say that before Bigger Pockets was around, the word house hack is I think from them. I was house hacking before I knew what that term was. So I wanted to be clear. Maybe I invented it. I'm not sure. And they're taking that from me. But yeah, I was squeezing every single ounce of everything from wherever I could. And then I started to grow the businesses that I had in front of me, which was property management. And I said, okay, now I need to grow this. So it went from 6 units to nine, and then I ended up buying out a company in Montclair, and that's really where I catapulted. And I said, okay, I can no longer do this by myself. I need to hire staff, and I can go into that further if the questions allow. But everything just started to snowball, and now I'm everything I touch now is somewhat focused around a real estate or a construction or something is all touching. So now all my businesses that I'll talk about all kind of overlap with each other, which is how I think the success has been happening. I didn't stray away and start running hats, right? That has nothing to do with what I'm good at and what I know. So I think that's a thing. You kind of keep your thing focused and take it one step at a time to the next thing that may be revenue generating.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So you don't want to get shiny object syndrome and go from one industry to a completely new industry or a venture. Basically, you want to keep things in your wheelhouse where you have that creative genius, where your strengths lie. So you kept it all within real estate. And this is something that I've seen from your growth and the different businesses you started is they're all kind of ancillary and support one another. You find a need, you find some place that you feel like you can do better, and then you decide to start a business there, which I think that's like entrepreneurship 101 is trying to add value, trying to fix a problem or be a solution to a problem.
Sure.
So in terms of where your businesses are today, what do they look like today? What are your goals for your business? Kind of where do you see yourself?
Mm-hmm. So to answer I think to piggyback off what you just said before I get into that, the big thing is making sure that you take action. And I think that's something that you always say about me when we have our conversations is taking the action. I don't consider myself, I was a B- student my whole entire life, basically. And that was with trying extremely hard. A ton of extra credit growing up in third grade, always doing the extra book report because I knew that I had shortcomings on like what school teaches, which is a lot of memory. My memory for school was very, very poor because it was not things I liked to do, obviously, right? If you tell me to remember something about the Mets or the Jets or business, I'm going to remember that. But I couldn't remember something from geography. Like it just doesn't stick in my head. It didn't seem important to me. So I always knew that I had to really work hard and do extra to get the good grades. But it's all about taking action. They didn't take the action. They're frozen by the action because they want to do. They're so used to doing a ton of research and listening to podcasts and reading, going down the Reddit rabbit hole, but that they don't actually take the action. So that's a big major factor of why my business is where they are versus someone who has a good business idea but won't do it because they're too busy doing something else. So I think that's the first thing I wanted to say.
Yeah, appreciate that. No, you're absolutely spot on. I think if there's any kind of corollary between all the different people that I've spoken with and come across that are super successful in business, it's that they do the thing, that they take the action. It's you learn enough to get started, and then you figure out the rest as you go. Because you're going to learn so much in different books and masterminds and podcasts and things like that. And I definitely encourage people to do those things when they get started because you have to have some base level of education. But then after you get to a certain point, you got to take action because you're going to learn way more by doing the thing than you ever will academically.
Correct. So to answer your question, where I am right now. So my portfolio is 16 multifamily houses throughout mostly New Jersey, but some out of state. I'm in 5 syndication deals where I'm a 3 to 4, 5% owner of a larger multifamily property. I'm an owner of a boutique hotel in Puerto Rico. And I have a general contracting company. I have a property management company. I own a portion of a drain cleaning company. And I'm soon to open up a home inspection company. So as you can see, all those pretty much relate to each other. They all touch each other. And I think where I think I'm the most proud of out of all of those, my biggest baby is the property management company. So, right. So I got my first client in a one bedroom or two bedroom condo in Clifton. I sold that person without even owning the company yet. I didn't even open up the LLC. I knew I was about to open up the LLC, but I didn't want to open it and pay for all the stuff before I actually had the client. So I told this person that I had it the next day. As soon as he said, okay, yeah, let's move forward, I opened up everything, got the agreements, and did what I needed to do, got the insurance, etc. So from there, I then sold a partner of mine a couple houses up in Sussex County, and I convinced him, and he was, although we were pretty close, he's like, listen, man, you still work a corporate job. How are you going to do this? And I was like, if anyone could do it, it's going to be me. So just trust me that I'm going to handle this. Gave me the business. And then that was like, now I was at 9 units. And then I think I got another friend that I sold a couple houses to. So I was kind of doing a dual. I was the realtor selling the houses, but I can also manage the properties. So then I got up to like 14 units, and then I bought that company in Montclair. After I got a couple more, I was at 20 something, and then I catapulted me from, I think I was at 30, that catapulted me to 90 when I bought out that company. But where I like and why I got into this was, again, I owned 5, 6 properties at the time, and I said I'm a really good landlord. Millennials want the glory of saying they own multifamily properties because it looks really cool on Instagram and to their friends, but they don't want to actually be a landlord because being a landlord kind of sucks. So I said, I actually don't mind being a landlord. Why don't I just do this? I'm a realtor anyway, so I can market the properties legally. Why would I not just do this? So that's kind of how this came to be. But where I think I'm most proud of in the actual company is that I have all in-house maintenance and a lot of in-house staff. So I am able to make money from all my own clients. And that might sound negative in the beginning, like, oh, he's ripping off all his clients, but I give my clients a major discount on the services. So I'm making money. And instead of me hiring an outside handyman for $100 an hour, I charge $75 an hour. So everybody's actually winning in that process. But meanwhile, I have consistent money coming in from the maintenance division of this property management company to the point where we're really close to hiring a second maintenance person just because we can't handle the inflow of tickets, because to continue to where we are right now, we have over 350 units that we manage right now. That ranges as small as a studio up to as large as a 35,000 square foot warehouse and everything else in between. 6 families, 10 families, Airbnb and Verbo in the short term space, the medium term space. We have all different divisions within that, where a lot of property management companies either are too small and it's the same person who is answering the phones is also fixing the toilet, or you have a company that's too big and they won't actually take on a smaller. So I fit in that middle part, and it's really cool to watch the progression of this, how it can grow, and it doesn't have to grow rapidly. Once you have a certain base, it just compounds from here, and you're just really critiquing the business, making sure you bring in the right staff and escalate from there. So that's been I would say really cool point is making money within your money. And that's something where a lot of referral based stuff happens, and then you escalate 4 years later, you're at over 350 units. When you started, you didn't even have a company.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. You just took us through the kind of entrepreneurial journey where you start as maybe like a sole proprietor or partner, and then you start to hire staff. And then as you grow, you start to outsource more and more of the stuff that either you're not great at or you don't enjoy doing, to really people who specialize in that. And that can be such an unlock in terms of potential for the company. And now you're at a point where you're in more of a managerial role. I mean, I know because we've worked together now extensively for a while, and you're more of the orchestrator, I guess. And whereas you have people that are handling the day-to-day, and that's kind of like what we're all kind of, I think, getting into entrepreneurial businesses for, to be able to get our time back, be able to focus on the things, solving the problems that we really like, and then having everybody else to kind of support everything else that goes on. So yeah, kudos to you, man, for building that. Now, as we close out this discussion, in terms of folks who are looking to take the first step in terms of entrepreneurship, what kind of advice would you give them? I mean, we spoke a lot about taking action, but maybe you can kind of expand upon that, or anything else that you would say for maybe yourself 10 years ago, 10 plus years ago, getting started.
Listen, it's okay if you don't want to be a business owner. I think that's pretty clear, right? There's a reason why there's a lot of jobs out there. Not everyone can do this. So if you can't do it, it's okay. Don't stress yourself out. Don't be an entrepreneur. Just go and keep your job. But if you want to do it, you need to be able to take the steps and know what you're good at. I'm very good at sales, right? I'm not great at accounting. and I don't like to do the books, and I don't like that stuff. I don't like admin, right? I'm not an admin type of guy. So I found partners that were admin type of people, and they weren't great at doing sales, or vice versa, right? So if you can't do it, find someone who you think you would want to partner with. And the biggest thing in partnering is trust, right? Like at the end of the day, no, you're never going to agree on everything. It's like a marriage, it's like a relationship, friendship, it's like a sibling relationship. You're never going to be perfect, but as long as you can trust that they're not going to take your money, then it could be a good partnership, right? But yeah, taking the action and just having the game plan, and having the fire. If the fire's in you, you have to be able to go and do what you need to do. And I think that's again, a really large thing you can take from me is that you don't have to be a great student. You didn't have to be the smartest person that can read 1,000 words a minute or type the fastest. It's just a matter of like, can you execute on what you're good at and hone in on the skills that you do have and make sure that you're going to actually execute, and just get off that hamster wheel. Like just get off. Like at the end of the day, you make sure you have enough nest eggs somewhere, or a backup plan, or someone that you, God forbid, something bad happened. Because listen, at the end of the day, and I think this is a really good point, at the end of the day, you jump off the hamster wheel and you don't succeed, you can always jump back on the hamster wheel. You're probably not going to not get hired again because you left the corporate world. If something really goes bad, you can probably find a job again, right? So that's always there as a backup, and no one's not going to hire you because I wanted to go try to do something on my own and it didn't work out, and now I'm going to go back to here. That's actually a great story. I used to hire people. I did hundreds and thousands of interviews in my career. If someone told me that, I would bring them right back on, probably in a sales role somewhere, to figure out what was wrong with them, because clearly something didn't work out.
Yeah, that's a really good. I think sometimes like when people are looking to make that jump, they think of the worst case scenario, and the worst case scenario is you leave the workforce, you try to do this venture, and then it fails, and then you're not able to get employed again. But that's not often the case, especially if you started off and built a pretty good base of a career and built up these skills. I think you're very employable, like you said. In fact, you may be more employable having tried those things because you worn a lot of different hats. You know what it takes to succeed in business, and so in your industry, you'd be a hot commodity, I believe. So yeah, that actually goes full circle to your original story about starting off in baseball, where if you're a 300 hitter, that's Hall of Fame status, a Hall of Fame quality player, and so you can't be afraid of rejection. That's the same thing that translates ultimately to business. Is you can't be afraid of failure. Failure is feedback. You learn, you're going to grow through the process. So really enjoyed hearing your story today, Justin. Really appreciate you sharing this stuff with myself, our audience. And just wondering if you have anything you want to plug. I know you have a bunch of different businesses. Maybe if you want to pick one or two that you want to talk about for folks who may be interested in the North Jersey area.
Yeah, sure. I would say the property management company would be the easiest. It's Ramapo Hills Property Management. If you have any multifamilies or single families or anything that you or a friend doesn't feel like managing because you want to be an investor versus a landlord, that's kind of our motto. And we run the buildings like they're our own, right? So if you're saying, I'm moving out of the country, I'm moving out of state, or my aunt passed this house down to me and I just really don't know what the hell I'm doing, reach out to Mark, or myself, and they'll get you in touch with me. So that's probably the easiest one. Then the second easiest one is if you have any drain clean needs out of your business or your house, the company's North Jersey Sewer and Drain Cleaning, and that's a booming business right now as well. So those two would be the two easiest ones for me that might be in the top of someone's head.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, we've had an awesome time speaking with you, Justin. Hope you've enjoyed it as well. And we'll look forward to maybe having you on at some point in the future as your businesses continue to thrive, continue to grow. I'm sure you'll be in a bunch more businesses by then. So thanks again for coming on.
Sounds good. I appreciate your time.
Have a good one now. Everybody, hope you enjoyed the discussion with Justin and some of the takeaways there. And feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to get in touch with any of the businesses that Justin mentioned there. So I'll sign off as we always do. Be kind, be charitable, invest wisely. Thanks.